Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by my friend Imran. Imran, thanks so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having me. It's really happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you, and I wanted to begin, Imran, by discussing you're not on social media, and I don't think I've ever asked you why that is or explored that realm with you ever. But I'm curious, why is that the case?
So I actually am on social media, but I don't like it's not like a personal like blog or something. Like I don't have any pictures of me on there or anything. Maybe in the profile picture I might have like part of my face or something, or not even that. But yeah, I just use it more to I guess kind of keep up with the world. But even that can get out of hand because there's just so much filth on there. So yeah, no, kind of I guess use it as my morning newspaper.
Interesting. Well, what kind
Yeah.
of social media is this, if you don't
So
mind me
just
asking?
Twitter and Instagram.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
That's it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's so interesting.
yeah. I
Yeah,
spend more time on Twitter because it's less media and more like, I guess words, or at least that's on my timeline is.
interesting.
Yeah,
Do you see those things as distractions for yourself?
yeah, 100%. There was a time where I was like spending hours just on social media, especially in like high school. And yeah, that took away from me being able to improve my grades or spend time on more productive things. So yeah, it's 100% a distraction for
Yeah.
me at least.
Benjamin Franklin, he said something along the lines of how men think that they're buying pleasure. What they're doing is they're actually selling themselves away to it. And I thought that was very interesting because
Uh,
it's very true.
yeah,
And that's such a true statement, but I'll be the first to admit that I could know that, but still fall prey to that trap of being
yeah.
distracted, of drifting away. How do you keep yourself from drifting away? How do you keep yourself away from being trapped?
I think one of the first things, well, that quote you said actually reminds me of another quote. I guess it's like was extracted from the same quote, but it went like uh, if if the product or whatever you're consuming is free, then the price was your soul. And
Mm.
so that really highlights like things like social media and everything, things even worse than social media that you can engage in online. But yeah, sorry, you said how you manage that or like what was your
I'm
question again?
curious about how you keep yourself away from getting trapped by
Yeah.
distractions.
Yeah, so I think one the first thing is realizing that these distractions uh they're not a burden on you. And a lot of people like you have to realize the reason they're a distraction in the first place is because they fulfill a desire. And so when it comes to social media specifically, these are like short bursts of dopamine and just quick injections of that feel good hormone. And that is what makes it addictive and like a distraction in the first place. And so we see that as a burden on ourselves. But if we think about how if we were able to manage that and control how much time we spend on social media or just online or just with distractions in general, and realize that staying away from them and spending time on more productive things is the more superior position to hold, or is the more uh, the thing that gives you more strength, then all of a sudden your desires are now based on principles, not just your neurochemical reactions in your brain. And now, even though you can get that burst of dopamine from social media or whatever else it is you're engaging in, it's that desire is just that fulfillment of the desire just isn't as sweet as you being able to take control of your life and being able to fulfill that bigger desire, the desire of being you and having an organic life and living a life that is meaningful and purposeful. And yeah, so it's just a prioritization of desires. And life is, I mean, if life is full of desires. It's just about what will we desire more? Will we fall prey to the lower desires that honestly all animals and all humans engage in, or will we go for the more upper, more holistic desires, which define you and make life more meaningful and purposeful? And so all of a sudden, when you put it like that, then these distractions, like you want to stay away from them. Then the desire to stay away from them becomes the bigger desire. And so then it's not as difficult as it may seem.
Yeah, that's a very fascinating way you articulated that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something earlier about filth, and I'm
Mm.
curious, can filth ever bring you strength?
So when I said filth, I meant it from the Islamic perspective. And since the Islamic perspective is the only right and objective perspective, the filth that I was talking about was the haram stuff that we as Muslims know is already haram. And it's haram for a reason. And so if the filth is haram, and we know the scholars have said that falling into haram actually weakens you, then obviously no, then the filth would can never bring you strength. Strength is in being able to control yourself and gear yourself towards more holistic purposes and goals.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned that. I remember listening to Hamza Yusuf one time, and he was speaking about the umbrella of the seven deadly sins, and he was saying that when you fall prey to them, you can never flourish, which I thought
Mm,
was very fascinating.
yeah,
That's just like the nature of it. You could never
yeah, yeah,
flourish.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but this does bring me to another interesting thing that I was thinking about. Junaid Jamshed. What I really love about Junaid Jamshed is he saw the world one way for such a long time in his life, and then he changed the way he saw the world, and then he lived that way for another period of his life. And I think what's so beautiful about that is because he was able to see it one way, his transition to the other way, it there's something more beautiful about it to me because
Yeah.
it's that idea of being able to see another perspective, and that strengthens you when you're
Yeah,
living another perspective.
yeah,
What do you make of that? About that? Because in some sense, I feel like that is where his strength came from, being able to see the world from another perspective like that.
yeah, yeah. I think so. Like I mentioned earlier, so I don't know if you know the details, but the few details I know about, like during the time where he kind of shifted and went the complete opposite way towards a more Islamic life. I think he was talking to some very big scholars in Pakistan, and uh, like he would sit and cry with them and discuss with them, and like I guess that was a point in his life where all these Islamic principles and ideas and all the warnings Allah gives in the Quran really started hitting him in the heart and just his soul in general. And so when he's then reflecting upon what he's been doing for his life, he realizes kind of what I was mentioning earlier, that he's been engaging in these like very low level desires, and there are much holistic, much more meaningful desires that he can go for. And these past desires that he's been indulging in have only been destroying him, emptying him out. And it's only in those moments where you kind of reflect on both lives, where you're kind of in that shifting moment, that you see how, dark your life was engaging in those very low level, kind of like soulless desires. But then there's this other more holistic desire that actually makes you a better person and makes you a better Muslim. And so I think his prioritization of desires shifted, and he realized that he'd been wasting his time this whole time.
They talk about desires as if they're a thing that keep you chained up. And I
Yeah,
definitely see the imagery with that.
yeah,
When the script flips and you become the person that holds the chains of desire,
right.
what's at the other end? What do you think?
At the other end is obviously number one, the pleasure of Allah and pleasing Him. So even when I'm talking about these holistic desires, it's they're a means to pleasing Allah and getting closer to Him. So that's the ultimate desire, right? That's the
Why
ultimate
is that
yearning.
the ultimate desire?
Because, well, I mean, first of all, Allah mentions it in the Quran that if you're gonna follow your desire, like have you seen the ones that has taken his desires as gods? And when Allah talks about the desires in this ayah, he's talking about the desires that you just kind of have those urges for those animalistic low level desires. And so if you're gonna let yourself be chained up by these different desires, then you're kind of a slave to a lot of different things. But when you
Yeah,
detach, yeah, yeah. So when you detach yourself from all the desires, but you only let one chain remain, which is you being a slave to Allah, then that's the only desireful, or like the chain of desire that remains is that you getting closer to Allah, and that truly frees you. And again, that's like it all comes down to the ultimate desires, ultimate happiness, ultimate purpose, ultimate uh like having that ultimate meaning in your life, and that comes with that single chain towards Allah.
yeah. And what you said was so funny because it reminded me of you become like a squirrel scurrying from acorn to
Mm,
acorn.
yeah.
And that makes me wonder, what do squirrels do during Ramadan? That'd be an interesting thing to like watch, huh? What are the squirrels doing? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think my experience with being on the superior edge of desires actually happened during Ramadan. I
Mm,
hated every Ramadan, or I disliked every Ramadan that I experienced, except for the last one. The last
right,
one felt transformative, and it was because I was no longer in service to false idols of
right,
desires. I kind of broken them and walked away, and that felt incredibly liberating.
right.
So I'm curious if Ramadan has that effect on you when it comes to desires.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the main reasons for
Oh, I
Ramadan to
can't hear
exist.
you
You,
anymore. Sorry.
oh,
Hmm.
can you hear me now?
Let me see real quick.
Can you hear me now?
Um, Actually, I think you can keep yours on.
Can you hear me now though? Can you hear me now? How about now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I just took out my headphones. I think that was the issue.
Yeah, I think that's what had happened.
Okay. Yeah, so you asked
Wait, sorry. Could you
um,
change your audio?
why is it
Change it to
is it
like another setting. Yeah, because it's coming off a little weird. Try like your headphones for the speaker.
all right, hold on.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It keeps it all candid. You know what I mean?
How about now?
I guess yeah, that's fine. Sure.
Like, do I speak louder or is it like what's wrong with it?
It's coming off a little weird. Kind of like I don't know how to say. It's like really fuzzy. It's fuzzy. Your voice.
Okay, how about now? I'm not sure actually.
It's okay. We'll roll with it. It's all good, man. No worries.
All right, all right, all right.
It keeps
But
it
you,
all candid. You know what I mean? But go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So your question, you said, um, has Ramadan been that factor where like I was able to shift and transform, like was able to transform it? I was just mentioning how that's like actually one of the purposes for Ramadan, where every Muslim throughout the year has 1 month to really uh, put away their most basic, not just desires but needs. You literally stop eating and drinking, and you're made to indulge more in the Quran, more in your salah, more in your prayers, and so you let your physical body empty out so you can feel the fullness of the soul and see how indulging in food for your soul actually feels like and feel that sweetness. And once you experience that, then you realize, okay, there's actually strength in me being more Muslim, being closer to Allah. And again, that shift of desires takes place. And now your desire to indulge in everything you were indulging outside of Ramadan isn't as strong anymore. And so when Ramadan ends, you're kind of left with this heightened spirituality where now you kind of want to test and see if maybe becoming more Muslim and coming closer to the Quran and to Allah is actually as sweet as it tastes in Ramadan. And of course, it always is.
As we know, faith is a fluctuating thing. What do you think it is that happens when someone who feels so strong to it suddenly turns away?
Turns away from faith.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, again, we're humans, and the last perfect human being was Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So any person, even the Sahaba, even the scholars from and the laymen, they're all going to be imperfect, and there's going to be periods in their life where faith lowers, and there's going to be times where faith rises. And the general advice that's given by scholars is to always keep improving yourself little by little. So even if your faith decreases, it's the low is still higher than the last low. So like I don't know if you're into stocks or not, but like the whole concept of higher highs and higher lows. So it's like
explain it.
so the general line is still upwards. It's like within the general line you're still fluctuating, but you're still headed upwards. So yeah, there's fluctuations and there's always going to be fluctuations, but as long as you're improving little by little, what you started off at the beginning of the year would be completely different from where you end up at the end of the year. And like you at the beginning of the year you were here and at the end you're up here, even though you kept fluctuating. But because you kept making those small changes, small improvements every single day, the general line was still upwards. And so,
Yeah,
you know,
it's kind of like you building your body, huh? Like as you've done. You told me when I asked you once, it
yeah,
took you that time. It took you the years to become shredded.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I
So,
wouldn't say I'm shredded, but
yeah, no, but it's very admirable physique, and
I
I'm
mean,
curious,
some,
since we're making this sort of a correlation, when you were on your workout journey, did it fluctuate where you were like, I'm tired of this. I just want a pizza. I want a Coke. Did that ever happen to you?
yeah. So for me, I mean, like, so for me, the point where I would be slacking off would be if I wasn't working out because I was always kind of generally skinny, like especially during high school. So if I ate a pizza or had a Coke, would actually like benefit me because I
Hmm.
needed the calories.
Yeah.
So for me, the part where I would like I don't know be slacking off would if I was getting lazy going to the gym or not working out at all. And yeah, of course I had those periods, but um, I don't know. It's yeah, and but you kind of have to like fall in love with the process. And that's the special thing about working out. You like, there's a sweetness to it while you're working out. And of course, then you also get encouraged by the results you see afterwards. But if you can get addicted to the process, then the results are a bonus. And the
If
journey
you
is
can get
like
addicted to the what?
the process.
The process.
Yeah.
How do you get addicted to the process? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, so in the case of like working out, uh, like so say like I don't know, you're working out and you can feel your muscle working and then the blood is rushing in and you can literally feel the fibers firing off and then the pump comes in and like by the end of the workout, like you're pumped up. You're literally almost inflated and you kind of have this almost perfect image of your body for like the next hour and that really encourages you to then go and do your next workout again. And yeah, and then like a month later, you do then see the results too. So like, with just this is a very specific situation. Like working out I think is very context specific. But yeah, with working out, there's you get rewards while you're working out. So
Yeah. I noticed the Pakistani flag in the background, and you and I are both Pakistani Americans. I'm curious in your words, what does it mean to be a Pakistani American? course, the limelight isn't shining on you for the answer, but I'm just curious, like in your words, what do you think that means?
To be a Pakistani American.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I never consider myself a Pakistani American. I just always call myself like, I'm Pakistani at heart. I just live in America. So,
Mm,
yeah, yeah. And I don't know. I actually don't know how to answer that question. I'd say for me, it means more like, remembering where I came from and kind of having a goal to one day go and provide for the place where I came from. Because I was actually born there, and I have some memories from there. So, yeah, I guess for me, it's like, okay, let me develop myself as much as I can here in America, and then maybe one day I can go and benefit my home country and help the people, help the society.
interesting.
Yeah.
Something that I've reflected on in the past few years is that my identity, it's a mix of so many different things, of so many different countries and cultures and people. And I could put titles onto myself, but those don't do any justice because I can't limit it to that. It's a cliche thing to say, but it's like I'm a citizen of the world.
Right,
It's just so many different things have influenced me.
right.
And so, yeah, that's just something I wanted to share
Yeah, yeah.
for myself.
Is that like a struggle for you, or is that something you just kind of have attached to?
Sometimes it feels heavy because of so much that has come and influenced me. But I don't know that it's a struggle. I just think it's a beautiful thing that I haven't quite been able to articulate yet.
Right.
But yeah, I am a Pakistani American, to put it that way.
So, yeah, yeah.
It's just something interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to discuss with you was you're a leader in the MSA, in the UHMSA, and I admire you for the work that you've done. You do a good job. And I'm curious, what does leadership mean for you?
So first of all, I definitely want to add that I haven't been the best of leaders, and I can maybe try and improve. But leadership for me always means that it should always be benefiting Muslims. Why else would I be leading anything? And if I am leading anything, and it's not ultimately benefiting Muslims, then I don't know. For me, it's kind of pointless. Like you're on Allah's earth, claiming to be a leader, and you serve no purpose towards Allah. So yeah, that's kind of what leadership kind of means to me, and it's not really leadership that uh, that I would kind of like. I don't care if I'm a leader or not, as long as I can make a difference. And if that means that I have to be a leader and have some influence, then fine, I'll be a leader, like a leader or whatever title I should have. But yeah, leadership it just kind of means being able to serve the Islamic cause.
Do you think we all have to make a difference?
Yeah, to some extent, it doesn't have to be to other Muslims. It can be just to yourself. And you have to realize that Islam is well, first of all, the way of life, right? And every Muslim, Islam itself is meant for leadership. And every Muslim is a leader. They can be a leader of their own self, be able to lead their own life. And once
You're a
they've
shepherd
mastered,
of your own herd.
exactly, exactly. And for those that think they have maybe a decent hold on that, then they can expand and maybe try and work with other Muslims to become their leader. Sorry, give me a second.
I love these
Sorry.
candid moments.
There've been a bit too many, honestly. Have you had this many candid moments with others, or
I've had a few, but it's fine, because it just goes to show that sometimes when people think about these sorts of things, they think, oh man, it has to be perfect. Like I've
Yeah,
definitely thought that, right? Like, oh, it has to be perfect and everything. But you just realize, hey, it's just me and a friend and we're just talking. It's just a conversation.
yeah,
And it'll benefit who it needs to.
right.
And the candid nature is just a part of it. So it's cool.
All right. But yeah, where was I? I was talking about leadership and
Yeah, you were just discussing how we were talking about we're all shepherds of our own little herd.
right,
And it's through that would make a difference.
right. So yeah, I think that's something every Muslim should have in their mind, and that helps provide a sense of superiority, and that's a good thing as a Muslim because we know Islam is uh, the only way of life, and so you being a follower of Islam, that puts you above 6 billion other people, not in an arrogant way, but in a way where okay, you have the truth, so now you can lead with objective truth and not just with desires and greed for whatever else. And so, yeah, everyone is a leader in Islam, whether of their own self or their little community, organization, society, or whatever it is. And I think that provides a really good sense of confidence.
Yeah, very true. And what you said reminded me of something a girl said at a MSA meeting one time, which was something along the lines of mediocrity is forbidden upon the Muslims. And I thought it was really cool
Subhanallah.
because
Yeah,
one of my friends, Roderick, he showed up to MSA one time. We were just talking and he was enjoying the scene and he was just asking me, what it's like being a Muslim. And I told him, like, the one thing I did notice was that when you're a Muslim, you see the world with a bit more of a transcended perspective, not arrogant or egotistical, but there's a higher purpose. There's something else that calls on to you, which you don't really get if you live a little more nihilistically.
right,
So I do think that that sense of duty or responsibility, like a
right,
shepherd to the herd, is a cool thing. It
right,
definitely lays something on you, which is
right.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think when you're able to internalize that, that prepares you for so many other extraordinary uh, uptakings. Like there's so the first president of Bosnia, Elijah Izetbegovic, he wrote a book called Islam Between East and West. And he said religion is the one thing that turns ordinary lives and ordinary men and transforms them to be able to uptake extraordinary feats and tasks. I thought like that really highlights the Islamic mentality or the Islamic philosophy, where if you implement Islam successfully and truthfully in your life, you'll become capable of some amazing things. And yeah,
yeah, that is fascinating that you said that. And that brings us to Junaid Jamshed again, eh? That's
yeah,
literally what happened to him.
right,
It was a transformation. He
so,
uptook, which is cool.
yeah,
Yeah, and I one another thing that I discussed with my cousin one time was that when you have faith, actually, let me word it this way. Jordan Peterson was talking about how there's people on earth that talk about how, well, why should I believe anyway? Because the world sucks and everything sucks and it's not fair. And he
yeah,
said, yeah, you're right. The world does suck and things are not fair, but it's a lot worse if you don't have faith. And I thought that was very endearing.
right,
And I've experienced that. Like it gets faith is that thing that presents a light to you when you are clouded in the darkness.
yeah. And I think you can take that further and say, because there's so much darkness and injustice in the world, that's why you should have faith. Like it's common sense to have faith. And that's why you see the most disconnected cultures, most distant tribes and uncontacted indigenous people have some concept of faith and God. And because again, it's common sense. You see the world around you and how it is and how it treats you. So like it's this innate common sense that you're born as a human being. In Islam, it's known as the fitrah, but speaking more just intellectually or more academically, it's like this innate common sense that you have to, this can't be it. We can't just be surrounded by injustice and half the world is dying of hunger and I'm here having food whenever I want. They're like, what's the meaning to this? And so you go searching for answers and you find faith.
Yeah. And you said that thing about common sense, and it was just making me think about desires again and Junaid Jamshed again. And it's like, I feel like when you dive so deep into the ocean of desire, it just seems like common sense that for the air to kind of see things rightfully again, you need to come up, and that's the faith.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
It's like the thrill of diving, of swimming down deep. It's fun, but at
right,
some point you need to come up for air.
right.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah. Another thing that I find really, well, this is another thing that I'm very fascinated to discuss with you. When I walk into a room or a party or something and I see all these people having fun and smiling and cracking jokes, I have to wonder, who are these people when they're angry? So I'm
yeah.
curious, what is your outlet for anger? Because as we know, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
So,
said,
so,
the strong man is the one who can contain his anger.
so one of the uh, most effective tactics for me, at least, to be able to, I guess, control anger and contain it is reminding myself that this life isn't perfect. Because usually the reason I get angry or I might, I don't know, just get upset because something didn't go my way. And so that upsets me. And so then I have to remind myself, like, what did you expect? Did you really expect everything to go your way? Like, Allah reminded you in the Quran that if you say you believe, you're going to be tested. So why were you deluded into thinking that you won't be tested and you won't have things that are going to, shake you up? And this is one of those moments. So control yourself, and you kind of have to really talk to yourself like that, like separate yourself into two. Here's the grown, mature part of yourself. Here's kind of like the childlike, angry version, and the grown, mature version has to kind of really control the immature one, and kind of tell yourself that, control yourself. You knew this was coming. Time to, act right. Either you put up with it or you're gonna get wasted, and because there's a lot more coming to you. So if you're gonna ponder upon this and let this, uh, I don't know, I guess waste you, then you're not gonna make it anywhere.
You have to be strong. Yes.
Yeah.
Something that came to my mind was a quote by Henry Longfellow. I don't remember the exact line, but it's something to the effect of how people see a person that's kind of solemn or quiet or serious, and they just think, oh, that guy's like a jerk. But
Yeah.
really, it's like every man, every woman carries their own sorrows, and that's how they deal with it.
Mm.
And so that thing about strength and patience, like maybe that's just what it is. Maybe you don't always have to be smiling, but
Yeah.
if you can stay like stoic, I suppose
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's something. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like the concept of being stoic should be heavily uh like applied to anger, especially. If you're happy and you can smile, I think you should express that as much as you can, right? And as long as it's appropriate, like obviously don't be smiling and laughing at a funeral or something. But yeah, but when it comes to anger, in most situations you should strive to contain. And it's gonna be hard. It's always hard. I'm not saying I've mastered it, but I think that's where inner strength and strength for your soul really comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing about the strength of the soul, there's something you told me once, and it stuck with me since, and I really appreciate you sharing that. You said something along the lines of how when you walk away from certain desires, the right ones find their way to you.
Mm.
Can you just explain that a little bit more for those watching?
Yeah. Um. So yeah, so kind of what we were discussing in the beginning was kind of related to this. It's that when you let go of that desire in those very heated moments where you just want to indulge in whatever desire this is, and you stop yourself from it, there's a certain sweetness and a certain satisfaction you get a while later from being able to stop yourself that you don't find anywhere else. And this sweetness is just much more innate, much more spiritual, and it's just so subjective that I can't really put into words, and you have to experience it for yourself. And that's what it really is. When you make space for those higher purposes, more holistic desires, then yeah, they'll come. But if you're gonna, occupy yourself with those like general urges you get, then yeah, you'll never be because you have to realize that your mind and your spirituality has a capacity. You can't be, I don't know, like listening to music, but then also trying to do a hifz. Those two, those are either you listen to music all the time or you read the Quran all the time. Those are two contradicting natures and concepts. So you have to choose one. So if you can understand your capacity and realize that, okay, it's either or, and then you're indulging in the right desires, the right motivation and urges, then you feel a certain sweetness that it's not there in anything else.
Yeah. And another thing that came up in my mind as you were speaking, Jordan Peterson was talking about prayer one time, and he said how it's like sacrificing the tyrant within you
Mm,
because the tyrant doesn't want you to pray.
yeah,
And when you do it, it sacrifices it. And so it's like
right.
that's like the
Yeah,
key, right? Prayer is the key to all that.
right.
So yeah, it's been a really cool conversation. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
appreciate the things you've said. It was very cool journey to explore.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah,
Yes,
you're actually really good at guiding the conversation. I really enjoyed this.
thank you, man. I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say but you didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
Um, so I guess since people are going to be watching this, I guess I just kind of have a message to, well, if you're a non-Muslim, then realize that if as a non-Muslim, you're going through life kind of blind, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, but you're probably in college or high school or whatever, or maybe even outside of college, and just kind of going through life, and there's going to be moments in your life where you're really going to question the reality and nature of life. Maybe a loved one passes away, or you come really close to death, or maybe you are on your deathbed and you're thinking back on your life and like, what was all this for? Why did I exist? Why did I come here? And it's really those things that religion is trying to answer. And just because there are so many religions doesn't negate the fact that there is a true one, there is a right one. So I urge all non-Muslims that may be watching this to study Islam from a common sense perspective. Because again, like I mentioned, being looking for the answers to these things is common sense. Take religion out the picture and yeah, really chase after the common sense, fulfill the hunger to answer these questions. And for all the Muslims watching, stay close to the Quran, um, implement, meet all your hardships and worries in your life with the tawheed of Allah. Whether it's your hardships, turn to Allah. Whether it's your desires, ask Allah for help. Whether in your happy moments and your sad moments, always depend on Allah. Stay close to the Quran and yeah, I don't claim to be a saint or some amazing Muslim, though. That's just kind of some advice off the top of my head.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. It
Yeah,
was
no
very,
problem.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
I have to ask, do you have is there anything from Junaid Jamshed that you like that he said?
so one of his nasheeds where he's like really expressing himself, uh, it's in Urdu, but like the translation is like he's asking Allah to change his heart, and he just says it on repeat. And it's interesting that he's singing this after what we see he's already changed, but it shows that he was like all throughout his life, even after the shift, he was still reflecting on the stuff he was indulging in before, and it really affected him. And so I think it's kind of a nice uh, concept to take away from his life. Try to kind of reflect on what you were doing before and where you are now, so you can have a sense of where you should be headed, and so it keeps you on the right track also.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, no
It was an
problem.
awesome conversation, my friend.
Yeah, it was a pleasure